Thank you, CityU team. Thank you to the amazing TEDx group, have done an amazing job in organizing this. I find it amazing. These guys are all students and they're doing an amazingly professional job. I want to talk with you a little bit today about the importance of beginning with the basics. So it never ceases to amaze me how well we often function despite the often suboptimal conditions that we inflict upon ourselves. So it's Saturday right now, maybe we've gone out, maybe we've had a few drinks, maybe we've gone out for a heavy meal, or between breaks at school, you have a Coke, some fries, maybe a hamburger, or Maltesers on the way back from home back home for a snack. And then the next day, sometimes you can get a little bit of brain fog, and you pop a Panadol, and you move on. But sometimes these little signals are meant for a reason. And our body needs some basics to function really well, and sometimes it's very easy to forget them, even if you know your stuff. I know I'm guilty of it. So I'd like to tell you a little story about how important the basics are, and one basic particularly which can really make a difference to global health. So cut back a few years. When I was growing up, my grandmother had a big influence on me. At the age of 87, she was brought up in front of the McGill University Gerontology department, questioned as to why she had blonde hair. We're not talking L'Oreal blonde, we're talking naturally blonde. Why she had very few wrinkles, and why she was able to do her taxes by hand. We're talking without a calculator. And she was faster adding up digits than I was at 17 on my calculator. Something was going on. So she attributed a lot of this to nutrition. She was a forerunner in her field, and I think she did her taxes by hand up until the time she was probably 92. So there was other things in there, but definitely nutrition was a very important part of it. Cut to a few years later. This is an area that I'm very interested in. I go to McGill, I go do my food science degree at McGill. Love what I'm studying, but at that point, I graduated in 87. Let me help you do the math, that puts me at 55. I'm probably graduated before some of you guys were born, but that's okay. We all share the same stories, the same interests. At that point, the industry was boring, like with a capital B. So I always been somebody who's been interested in interesting opportunities. So I did a bit of a left turn and got lucky with my first job, and I was national marketing manager for an airline company and enjoyed it for 3 or 4 years, and then decided I probably need some more training. Went to Paris to do my master's in economics media studies. Love struck, met my husband, had 3 kids, 3 wonderful children, and worked in the media industry. And life was pretty good. Then things changed. My husband's an entrepreneur, and he doesn't know this story, by the way. I'm telling you for the first time in front of him. So my husband's an entrepreneur, and as will happen with most entrepreneurs, we hit a bump in the road, and we had to change life as we knew it in France. So we picked up the 3 children by the bootstraps, sold the cars, sold the house, sold everything, took children out of the familiarity of their schools, their home, their environment, their family, their friends, and we moved to Hong Kong under relatively stressful circumstances, and started up a company here, and without an expat package, putting 3 kids in an international school. So life was pretty stressful. And then all of a sudden, stressful went to super stressful. 2 of our children were diagnosed with health issues that were on the surface practically imperceptible, but had broad-reaching impact, were difficult to diagnose, even more difficult to deal with. And my job was really to support them therapeutically, and but make sure that it was almost imperceptible to them and the outside world while I fixed things up. So my husband was obviously pretty busy with his work, and I'm feeling like Atlas with the world on my shoulders and feeling a little bit crushed underneath the load. But then there's a time in life when you have a wake-up call and you need to change your tack, and this was absolutely mine. All these years of really being interested in food science and nutrition, the 25 books that I had on my shelf of food and health, my grandmother, my beautiful grandmother's influence, and what am I doing? Where is my norm? Like, normally I should be out there on the right, but what is the norm? Like, we're talking pasta on the bottom, wine, chocolate. I am not practicing what I'm preached. Am I part of the problem? Maybe not, but am I part of the solution? Absolutely not. So that's when I dug in and changed the focus of our life internally at home, and really dug in to make sure that each bite that we had brought us towards health. And you can make a choice with each bite that you have. You've got the nutrients in food, which will protect and heal the body. But that does not mean that each bit of food is nutritious. So it's a choice that we make every day. And I made that choice to really make a big difference in the way we ate. And added to that, obviously, other things. So sleep became very important, as well as a newfound love of yoga, so breath as well. And over a few years, things got much better. The children, a few years later, both of them were in much better state. They're starting to really rock those school years. My husband's business is doing really well, and things are doing well. And I've also started to find myself as an informal resource on the pathways between food and health, but more in a simplified version for people who don't have a lot of time and need to sort of cut corners and just understand what the basics are. So a friend who's giving lectures at a bank, she's asking me to come and give lectures. So I started to do some talks in a distilled fashion on the pathways between food and health. Then we decide, let's maybe roll this up into a book. So there's a difference between giving lectures and then putting a book out and publish it. So I want to make sure that what I'm writing is I'm on bedrock science. And if anybody's done some research on food and health and the internet, you'll realize that there is a marketing overload. The information out there is patchy, inconsistent, and now I see it, a lot of it is actually quite false. So I'm looking for bedrock information. And I go to speak to a friend of mine. I get all the essence of the chapter lined up. I go to speak to a good friend of mine who's a postdoctorate in biochemistry and who's done years and years of clinical and applied work in basically the pathways between food and health, just to make sure that everything that I'm writing is correct and solid. So it's only in the conversation that I have with him that I realize, for all these years, there's one fundamental piece that I'm missing, which is the cornerstone for health for each and every one of us here, that I had missed in the nuances in all the time. And I wasn't the only one, actually. Protein. Protein, it's, eggs, cheese, meat, protein powder, quinoa, beans. We are big piles of protein, and we need a lot more of it than we understand, than most of us know, and it does a lot more for us than most of us realize as well. But when I thought about it, I'm a fairly informed consumer, and if I missed the nuances, how many other people were missing these nuances as well, and how well could that impact, how positively could that impact people's lives? So actually, I wasn't alone. In Hong Kong, nearly 1 in 5 of us are not getting enough protein. Women are the worst offenders. The deficiency has led the Hong Kong Red Cross to reject 16% of the female blood donors and 8% of the men blood donors in 2016 because of low hemoglobin rates. And that's protein. That's protein. So most people realize that the fitness industry has done a really good job in this. A lot of the conversation around protein has been locked up by the fitness industry. So most people realize that, you know, the muscles and the structure and the bone are supported by protein. But what also happens is protein also has many other effects. It is a powerful antioxidant and detoxifier. So in a city like Hong Kong, when we've got, you know, when you're breathing polluted air, when the food is sometimes of questionable quality, this becomes really important. Protein is the biggest detoxifier that we have. You don't have to eat grass. Protein, a good quality protein, is one that will really help detoxify the body. It's also an powerful antioxidant. So that's anti-inflammatory and that's anti-aging at the cellular level. It supports global health, immunity, hormones, and regulates mood. There's just so much more that protein will do for us that is often overlooked. However, all proteins aren't the same. So they're quite, here's where the nuances is. First of all, it's important to know how much we need. You need about 1 gram of protein per kilogram of body weight per day. And okay, I don't want any of the vegans or the vegetarians to run at me here, but the truth of the matter is we need a lot of protein. And we have, in an animal source, you have about 2 to 10 times more than you will have in a vegetarian source. So it's really ideal to mix both, to make sure that you get sufficient quantity. That's the first thing. The second thing is we can't store the different building blocks of protein. You need to replenish your supply every day. That's on the quantity point of view. And then from a quality point of view, if you could look at protein like a necklace with 20 different beads, those are the individual components of the protein. And those beads are broken up in 3 colors. So one color is really good, if you go back, one color would be really good for muscle structures and bones. One color would be really good for, you know, the antioxidant and the detox capacity. Those ones tend to be a little bit more heat sensitive, so you lose something in the cooking, but they're there. And one color supports global health, immunity, and hormones, and regulates mood. So you want to make sure that the protein that you're having is complete and offers you all this. The second thing is it needs to be absorbable. The absorbability means that it's how quickly you can bring it into your system. Because if you can't absorb it, it doesn't really do much for you. And then the third thing is you want to make sure it's clean. It's clean. You don't want any pesticides. You don't want any antibiotics or growth hormones in it. You don't want those beads in the necklace to be laden with all that stuff because your body uses it for thousands of different actions per second. So you really want to make sure that what you're consuming is clean. So, how can we put all this into practice? And I just want to leave you with 3 things you can do and 3 things, very simply, 3 things you can think about. So, from a practical point of view, I'm a very practical person. So from a practical point of view, an easy thing to do is separate out your plate into, or what you eat into 2 buckets, an 80% bucket and a 20% bucket. And in the 80% bucket, you put in pretty well everything which is non-processed or as little processed as possible. So when I'm saying processed, it needs to look like it did in the origin. Make sure in there it's clean and that there's no added sugar. And then the 20%, no big deal. That's fine. Hamburgers, Diet Coke, Maltesers, whatever. But keep it to your 20% and not in your 80% bucket. Your headaches the next morning will thank you. And then the other thing is you want to add some quality absorbable protein from a nutrient-dense source in every meal. And the third thing you want to think about is the way you cook things. You want to make sure, like, you can have the best quality food can be ruined with the way you cook it. So cook it safely, and that means no deep frying. Deep fried is definitely, or fried foods are definitely in the 20% bucket. So those are 3 easy things that you can think of to do on a daily basis. And then those are 3 things that I'd like you just to take away and think about. And that's, protein is more than for fitness. It's really the foundation of health. And it does so much more than supporting your bones and your muscles. And you want to introduce the best quality that you can afford on a daily basis. It'll support your detox, it'll help, clean up from the environment that we're in, support moods, hormones, cellular repair. And the last thing is there's always a correlation between the food that we eat and the health that we enjoy. It's a choice you have every day to move towards your health goals or move away from them, and begin with the basics.